It all begins on a desolate battlefield with bodies scattered under a stormy sky. A wounded warrior grips his blood-stained sword firmly as lightning tears through the clouds. Seated on his stone throne appears the terrifying leader of the demonic cult of the sun and moon. The villain gives a twisted smile and says he finds it very amusing to face the Sword Emperor. Nam Yeong Shin appears completely bruised and exhausted, struggling to catch his breath amidst the chaos. Even after losing one of his arms, the proud lord of the Southern Sky Palace remains standing. He grits his teeth with hatred upon hearing the mockery of his terrible enemy. In a flashback, a young disciple warns that the demonic cult has invaded Anhui province. Young Shin reflects that a hero's sword is sharp because it carries great responsibilities. He asks his allies if they possess the courage of a hero or the fear of a coward. All the disciples shout with pride that they will fight alongside their leader until the end. Back in the present, he weeps to see that his men followed his teachings and died fighting. With his only remaining arm, the warrior grips his hilt with extreme determination. With his face covered in blood, he declares with fury that now it is his turn to attack. The leader shouts that his disciples never retreated and marched bravely forward. He observes the sword stuck into the ground, proud of the duty fulfilled by his warriors. A devastating impact shakes the entire earth around them, kicking up dust and rocks. Young Shin advances toward the enemy, exalting the unwavering justice of his sect. He bellows in fury, questioning how that monster dares to find the situation amusing. The cult leader just laughs, showing his sharp, grotesque teeth. The villain thinks to himself that the hero no longer has the strength to even hold his weapon. Even while staggering, the swordsman raises his giant blade, ready for the final confrontation. The demonic leader mocks him once more, asking if he can handle the consequences of this act. Young Shin replies that his sword is an extension of his own hand, and nothing will make him back down. The villain questions if the sky will remain the same, while releasing a terrifying, dark energy. The two finally move at high speed, creating an overwhelming collision of powers. The warrior delivers a brilliant and precise strike against his adversary's neck. The blade cuts through the air with extreme speed, hitting the target without a chance for defense. The cult leader's head is severed in a violent gush of dark blood. Young Shin stands still while a red rain falls upon his weary body. Even decapitated, the monster's head utters a final, macabre phrase about the sun and then the moon. The warrior watches in shock as a purple portal begins to open in the air before him. With three bizarre eyes, the villain's head floats and swears they will never be parted. An explosion of purple energy consumes the entire scene with colossal force. The blinding light takes over the entire mountain in a deafening crack. The strong wind blows the leaves of an isolated tree after the terrible burst of power. Young Shin moans in pain and uses his sword as a crutch to keep from collapsing on the destroyed ground. He breathes with great difficulty, realizing the battle ended in mutual destruction. Looking around, he contemplates the sad silence of the field filled with lifeless bodies. His heavy feet take a few unsteady steps as blood drips onto the floor. Without the strength to continue, he eventually falls to his knees upon the blood-moistened earth. He laments that his grand title of Sword Emperor is worthless if he couldn't save anyone. Spitting blood, he offers sincere apologies to his fallen disciples for having failed them. With a melancholy expression, the warrior looks upward, feeling his end drawing near. A warm, golden light begins to emerge from between the dark clouds covering the sight. He realizes that beautiful blue sky was exactly what he so wanted to protect. Even admiring the blue expanse, he wonders if a failure like him has the right to touch it. Suddenly, he spits out a large amount of dark blood as his body fades away. His thoughts drift, wondering if everything would be different if he were just a little stronger. His eyes close slowly as he asks himself if only regret remains in his blade. Suddenly, the young man wakes up startled, hearing someone shouting an unknown name. Without understanding anything, he ends up receiving a violent kick to the face from a furious man. Fallen on the ground, the boy tries to understand where he is and why he is being attacked like that. The bearded man keeps bellowing, calling him lazy and ordering him to get up immediately. The young man realizes he is in someone else's body and is in a complete state of shock. He is assaulted once more by the violent man while trying to get his bearings. The bearded man complains, saying he took him in when he was just a helpless, sick orphan. The boy protects himself from the blows, clearly remembering that he had already died in the previous battle. He is certain it is not a dream, and that he really was the great sword emperor. He begins to suspect that his final wish somehow defied the laws of heaven itself. Seeing another attack coming his way, the young man decides it is time to act. With extreme ease, he reaches out his arm and catches the attacker's foot in mid-air. The bearded man is left completely stunned to see his blow blocked so easily. He tries to pull away and realizes with fear that the boy's strength is completely out of the ordinary. The young man stands up slowly, emanating a dark and frightening presence. He stares at his aggressor with a cold, piercing gaze that sends shivers down the spine. The bearded man begins to shake with dread, feeling the boy's terrible pressure. In a panic, he loses his balance and falls backward, completely terrified. The boy approaches him calmly, maintaining the same intimidating expression. Quickly, the young man takes the man's sword without him even being able to react. He looks down with contempt, ready to teach the coward a lesson. The young man states with disdain that someone who mistreats weak children does not deserve to carry a sword. Some spectators appear in the distance, laughing and mocking the bearded man's humiliation. They jeer even more, saying he lost to a sick and weak boy. Upon hearing his companion's jokes, the bearded man grits his teeth, consumed by rage. Furious, he gets up, screaming that the boy has gone completely crazy because of his illness. He charges at the young man, unleashing an attack with his staff. The boy maintains absolute calm and just readies his blade to respond to the attack. In the blink of an eye, a precise and swift cut severs the aggressor's arm. The people who were watching are paralyzed with shock and horror. Panic takes over the area as everyone screams upon seeing the bloody scene. The man falls to his knees, screaming in extreme pain while holding his severed arm. The young man coldly orders him to lift his head and look at him. Totally broken and without strength, the man bows, begging for his life. Crying desperately, he asks for forgiveness while blood continues to spurt out. Looking at the young man, the bearded man sees the grand and frightening silhouette of the Sword Emperor. He realizes, crying, that the weak boy from before has completely disappeared. The aggressor understands that he is facing someone entirely different and ruthless. The scene changes to show an old village surrounded by mountains under a heavy sky. A group of masked warriors dressed in white gathers under the black clouds. The group's leader orders that their absolute priority is to capture the young man with the broken meridians. With cruel red eyes, he commands them to eliminate anyone who tries to stand in their way. The subordinates shout in approval and disappear quickly to carry out the mission. Back at the village, the bearded man remains kneeling and trembling with fear before the young man. The boy's eyes shine with a mystical light, demonstrating that his warrior soul has awakened. Terrified, the bearded man cries, thinking he will be executed right there. He bangs his head on the ground desperately, asking for forgiveness for everything he has done. With trembling hands, the man begins to rummage through his clothes to grab something. He throws a bag of coins on the ground, begging for the boy to accept it and forgive him. The young man just stares at him in silence with his brilliant and imposing gaze. The boy asks if the coward really thinks he can buy his forgiveness so easily. He recalls the last 5 years in which he went hungry and was cruelly beaten for no reason at all. While the man cries on the ground, the young man says as he was exploited and humiliated whenever his illness struck. In the distance, a mysterious woman in a black hat watches the whole scene, hidden amidst the trees. The mysterious warrior focuses her attention on the boy, showing surprise at what she sees. The young man states that even in a different body, he has not forgotten the suffering he endured there. He rejects the coins, saying that a fake apology is useless to compensate for the past. The aggressor realizes with dread that the boy can see through all his lies. The young man lifts his blood-stained sword firmly, ready to decree the final judgment. In a swift movement, he cuts the man's throat without showing any kind of mercy. He declares that those who mistreat the weak must pay with their lives and lose the right to use swords. The mysterious warrior widens her eyes in complete shock at what she just witnessed. She recognizes the boy's words as one of the main philosophies of the powerful Blue Sky sect. The young man sheathes his sword and begins to walk away, leaving the aggressor's body behind on the ground. He looks at the sky, thoughtful, while trying to plan his next step in this new world. He wonders what to do now, as he knows no one and has no allies to help him. Suddenly, a scream of panic echoes through the area, making the warrior look back immediately. In the distance, he sees a man running desperately toward the village to save his life. The villager begs for help, shouting with all his might that monsters are attacking. A masked warrior emerges from the shadows and attacks the poor villager from behind without any mercy. The boy watches the terrible scene and grits his teeth, feeling an immense fury grow in his chest. The other village residents begin to run in a panic, screaming that the demons have invaded the place. More masked assassins appear, emanating a purple and evil smoke that scares everyone. The young man notices on their clothes the dark design of a black sun superimposed on a red moon. He immediately recognizes the terrible symbol of the demonic cult he fought so hard to destroy. He feels the terrible dark energy coming from the assassins and confirms that they are real demons. The warrior is indignant to see that the cursed sect survived even after all the sacrifices. The assassins begin to massacre the innocent civilians to close the perimeter around the village. Upon hearing the enemies looking for someone with broken energy channels, he realizes the target is him. He tightens the sword hilt with hatred, seeing those monsters continue to kill innocents. The boy decides he cannot simply ignore the situation and let everyone die like this. He knows very well that those merciless demons are a threat that must be eliminated. Without hesitating, he starts walking toward the danger, drawing the attention of the other residents. The villagers try to stop him, warning desperately that going there is a certain death sentence. The young man ignores the warnings, thinking a true warrior must act at the right moment. He smiles slightly, knowing exactly the right moment to draw his blade. The survivors look at his back, unable to believe in the boy's absurd courage. The masked assassins spot the young man and advance at high speed with their swords ready. The young man recognizes that his current body is weak and lacks internal energy, but his determination remains alive. He grips his weapon tightly, knowing his path in the martial arts remains exactly the same. The warrior positions himself, remembering with great pride that in his past life he was the Sword Emperor. The woman in the black hat continues to observe the boy's movements with extreme attention. She is impressed to notice that he is using the classic stance of the three celestial forces. The boy focuses deeply, causing an intense white aura to emanate from his entire body. The warrior is amazed by the young man's impressive focus, which seems to ignore everything around him. With narrowed eyes, he analyzes the battlefield using his keen combat instincts. He calculates the position of each enemy, noting 3 on the left side and 4 on the right. He raises his sword high above his head, preparing to deliver a single, fatal counterattack. The first assassin approaches, delivering a swift strike while the boy maintains a firm stance. With total serenity, the young man whispers the name of the powerful divine technique that will liberate the sky. Taking a firm step forward, he prepares to release the first part of the attack. The boy executes an extremely fast vertical cut, dividing the air with absolute precision. The first assassin falls dead to the ground instantly, unable to attempt a reaction. The other enemies surround the young man quickly, trying to attack him from several sides at the same time. With agile movements, he dodges and deflects all the blades that try to hit him. The boy then whispers the second element of the strike, focusing all his strength on the earth. He spins his body, delivering a powerful horizontal cut that throws the adversaries back. One more opponent tries to leap over him, gripping his weapon with great fury. The young warrior reacts in the blink of an eye, predicting the exact trajectory of the enemy. He whispers the final element of the technique, completing the perfect union of the attack. The final strike hits the assassin's chest with extreme violence and surgical precision. With a calm and imposing countenance, the boy finishes the movement without any difficulty. The opponent lets out a moan of pain upon realizing he has been completely defeated. The assassin falls to his knees on the ground with a deep cut on his back while bleeding heavily. Before passing out, he looks at the boy, scared, muttering that he is a true monster. The boy takes a deep breath, feeling extreme fatigue begin to weigh on his muscles. The last enemy of that group falls lifeless to the earth, consolidating the young man's victory. Several bodies are left scattered around the boy, who remains standing, holding his sword. The mysterious woman in the black hat remains incredulous to see that he used only a basic technique. She realizes, fascinated, that the boy possesses an unbelievable natural talent for the sword. Suddenly, the young warrior feels a new threat approaching and looks upward. He spots a group of new enemies, standing on the roof of one of the houses. Observing the situation, the boy prepares himself mentally, aware that the fight is still far from over. The leader of the new group is shocked to see that the entire first team was eliminated so quickly. Upon trying to raise his weapon, the young man feels his hand tremble and suddenly lose its strength. A sharp and unbearable pain hits his chest, causing him to let out a groan of agony. The boy falls to his knees on the ground, using his blade as a support to not collapse completely. He remembers, distressed, that his body suffers from serious blockages in his energy channels. The warrior realizes that the terrible symptoms of a seizure have started at the worst possible moment. From above, the enemies watch the boy, vulnerable and totally defenseless before them. The masked leader compares the boy to a wanted poster and confirms the identity of his target. With cruel red eyes, he gives the order to capture the boy without causing him a single scratch. 4 subordinates jump from the roof, advancing toward the young man incapacitated by pain, even trying to fight against the paralysis. The boy cannot move to defend himself. Suddenly, rays of blue electricity fall from the sky, hitting and driving away the attackers. The boy looks up, surprised to see that powerful barrier of brilliant electricity. The mysterious woman in the hat appears on the roof, wielding her sword charged with lightning. She reveals herself as a formidable warrior, ready to face the threat of the demonic cult. The enemy leader recognizes her, scared, knowing that the powerful Blue Sky Society has discovered their plans. With an imperceptible movement, the woman attacks the first adversary with extreme speed. She jumps toward the courtyard, drawing the attention of all the remaining cultists. The enemy boss tells his men to buy time, while he focuses on fulfilling his main mission. Several subordinates jump toward the warrior, trying to surround her in the air in every way. With total elegance, she simply draws her shining sword, emanating a brilliant power. Her eyes shine intensely as the power of the blue lightning accumulates in her weapon. In a fraction of a second, she cuts down the enemies with a devastating explosion of electricity. The warrior moves like a blur, jumping with lightness among the bodies plummeting from the air. She lands softly on the ground, without making a sound after performing the lethal attack. The boy watches everything in complete silence, impressed by such combat skill. The opponent's bodies fall defeated under a rain of blue sparks that illuminates the entire place. Observing the woman's steps, the young man recognizes with shock the legendary movement technique of his former sect. He wonders, intrigued, how that unknown warrior could know the secret steps of the Southern Sky Palace. Suddenly, one of the remaining assassins emerges from the shadows, trying to attack the tired boy from behind. The enemy immobilizes the young man, stating cruelly that he will take him with him no matter what. The boy tries to resist and fight, but the terrible pain of his illness prevents him from breaking free from the grip. From above, the mysterious warrior senses the danger and plummets toward the two like a brilliant bolt of lightning. With a single electrifying strike, she severs the attacker's arm, freeing the boy from his clutches. The assassin screams in pain and astonishment, unable to comprehend the woman's absurd speed. Without wasting time, she finishes off the opponent with mastery, letting his body fall to the earth. She orders the demons to back off, saying with a friendly smile that she liked the boy quite a bit. Still suffering from the seizure and the lack of energy, the young man continues trembling in pain on the ground. His vision begins to darken quickly, and he ends up fainting due to extreme fatigue. The warrior is startled to see the boy lose consciousness and runs to help him immediately. She holds him in her arms, thoughtful and worried, not knowing for sure what to do with him from there. The young man remains completely unconscious while being taken to a safe and protected place. Sometime later, he wakes up startled in a soft and comfortable bed inside a quiet room. Looking to the side, he sees the same mysterious woman who asks calmly if he is okay. The warrior in the black hat sketches a kind and friendly smile upon seeing that the boy has finally awakened. The two begin to talk in the quiet room, while the young man tries to understand where he ended up. He reflects, intrigued, that her techniques are fantastic, but do not belong to his former sect. The woman explains that she managed to stabilize the cold and deadly energy that was destroying his body. The young man is shocked, as he knows that this grave condition of blocked energy channels is extremely rare in men. He recognizes that calming this cold and dangerous energy requires an absurd effort and power on her part. By her soft voice, the boy deduces she is very young, but her level in martial arts is spectacular. The lady decides it is time to introduce herself formally and reaches her hand toward the brim of her hat. She slowly removes the accessory covering her face, revealing her features to the boy. The young woman lets her long dark hair fall with great delicacy, demonstrating total serenity. She reveals herself as a beautiful young lady with gentle features, who transmits great confidence and peace to the boy. The lady introduces herself as Lee Si, of the Blue Sky sect, and invites the boy to come with her. She offers the chance to make him her disciple to teach him to fight and ensure his grave illness. Lee Si reveals that she was very impressed by the courage and precision of the strikes he delivered earlier. The young man is curious, as he has never heard of anyone who managed to cure this ailment. The lady smiles confidently, indicating that the secret to the cure is in her own hands. She makes small electrical sparks appear from her fingers, demonstrating her incredible internal power. She explains that she masters a fire technique capable of curing his body, but it only works on men. The boy agrees mentally, knowing that a common fire technique would never be enough to save him. He reflects that if the technique is applied incorrectly, the clash of energies could cause rapid death. The lady guarantees that his body has the potential to withstand the treatment and fully recover. The boy recognizes that her method is very refined and truly has a great chance of success. He concludes that if he manages to absorb this energy, he will be able to surpass the level he had in his past life. However, a crucial doubt arises in his mind, making him look suspiciously at the beautiful warrior. The young man questions why she wants to adopt as a disciple a simple boy she just met. Upon hearing the boy's direct question, the lady just gives a mysterious and intelligent smile. She repeats his phrase about the warrior's duty, saying she is looking for a disciple with a just heart. The young man is thoughtful and surprised to realize that she was paying attention to his venting during the fight in the village. He tightens the bedsheet, reflecting deeply on the true meaning of being just. The boy then asks, in a challenging manner, what would happen if he decided to decline the proposal. The lady explains seriously that he will continue to be hunted by the demons and will need to live isolated and hidden. He questions why her sect would care so much about him instead of simply eliminating him. He answers with conviction that they must always protect the innocent so as not to become monsters themselves. The boy asks if the coward really thinks he can buy his forgiveness so easily. She reveals that her desire is to be someone who protects and values the little things forgotten by all. The young man is extremely surprised and touched upon hearing such a noble thought from that young warrior. He gives a discreet smile, concluding that she is more than worthy to be his master on this journey. The boy bows deeply in respect, leaving the young woman completely surprised by his attitude. He offers sincere apologies for having doubted her intentions right at the beginning when she made the invitation. Understanding, she asks with curiosity if he finally made the decision to accept her proposal. The young man raises his head with determination and states firmly that he has decided to follow her from now on. She celebrates, saying he made the right choice, and calls him by the nickname they used for him in the village. The young woman then suggests he needs a real name to throw off the dangerous enemies hunting him. He remembers with anger the old, dull nickname the village aggressor had given him in the past. The young man reflects in silence that he really needs to adopt a new, strong name to start this new phase. To honor his old sect and his disciples, he decides to adopt the prestigious surname Namgung. He chooses the first name Jun, meaning und, to decree the termination of his old life of failures. The young woman suggests exactly the beautiful name Namgung Jun, which combines perfectly with his thoughts. The boy accepts immediately, declaring with great pride that this will be his new official name. The lady repeats the name softly, get used to it, and evaluate how the boy's new identity sounds. She gives a very beautiful smile, approving the choice and finding the new name extremely imposing. They then prepare to begin the first training lesson in the quiet room. The boy assumes a formal stance and introduces himself as the newest disciple of his savior. He kneels on the bed and performs a solemn bow, demonstrating deep respect for his new master. The young woman observes the boy's respect with sympathy, proud to have earned his trust. The boy remains bowed, demonstrating that his loyalty is sincere and that he is ready to learn. She accepts the greeting with joy and says they will start the practical training immediately. The young man is startled by her haste, as he did not expect to start training so suddenly. He makes a confused and funny expression, unable to hide his surprise at the lady's decision. Time passes and dusk arrives, painting the mountain sky with beautiful pink colors above the temple. She places an old book on the table, explaining that everything starts with the understanding of martial theory. With a focused gaze, she asks if he is ready to learn the first energy formulas. Night falls over the mountain temple, revealing a spectacular and very serene starry sky. The master points to the secret Yang energy manual, which will be the basis for the boy's cure. She is a bit confused by the surname Namgung that he chose, as she has never heard of it before. The lady opens the book and begins to explain in detail the first concepts of energy circulation. The young man listens attentively, demonstrating total respect and dedication to her valuable teachings. He analyzes the young woman's enormous potential, concluding that she is a brilliant and very talented ally. He realizes that her talent is comparable to his in his past life as Sword Emperor. She teaches how to guide the internal flow with strength, while the young man analyzes the energy paths. The lady explains that with his native Yang energy, there is a real chance of fully curing his blockages. The young man agrees that her technique is of the highest level and that a cure is perfectly possible there. He realizes that overcoming this great initial obstacle will be the key to reaching the peak of his power. However, the young man glances away suspiciously, trying to understand the true motive for so much interest. He asks openly why she decided to adopt a complete stranger as her only disciple. Upon hearing the boy's sincere questioning, the lady just opens a sweet and very friendly smile. She recalls the speech of honor he gave during the battle and says she wants someone with a just heart. The young man is surprised to notice that she was paying attention to his words on the battlefield. He tightens the fabric of his clothes, reflecting in silence on the weight of carrying a just heart. Next, he asks what she would do if he simply decided to refuse the generous offer. The lady explains seriously that he will continue to be in constant danger and that she would have to keep him safe in isolation. He questions if it wouldn't be easier for her sect to simply eliminate him to avoid problems. She answers inspiringly that if they did that, they would be no different from the demons themselves. Namgung Jun slowly opens his eyes, very focused on what is to come. Lisiha claps, all proud, and praises the excellent progress of her young disciple. She extends her hand calmly and asks him to try to copy exactly the movement she is about to perform. With a confident smile, she accumulates powerful, brilliant electrical energy around her clenched fist. Namgung Jun remembers that he should not reveal his strength easily in the dangerous world of martial arts. but he concludes that there is no reason to hide all his true power from his own master. Lisi widens her eyes, completely shocked to see that he actually managed to perform the technique. She opens an amazed smile, thinking she spent all the luck of her life finding such a prodigy. The young man says he also wishes to learn other arts, such as sword handling and rapid movement techniques. Enthusiastic, she invites him to go to the Blue Sky Society, where he will find the ideal fighting style. Namgung Jun agrees, nodding, excited by the great chance to learn new combat techniques. He recalls the techniques of the Southern Sky Palace, but knows that just copying them would make the sad past repeat itself. To prevent tragedy from happening again, he decides to create a style even stronger than the one from his previous life. The two start walking side by side, beginning a long journey toward the society's headquarters. As they walk along the mountain trail, Namgung Jun begins to reflect on the mysterious Blue Sky Society. It is a great alliance formed by several sects that were devastated by the terrible demonic cult. It was founded precisely by the brave survivors of those destroyed clans who decided to unite to fight. The young man asks if the main virtues of their society really are justice and acts of bravery. He is confused, thinking if the total destruction of the enemy cult and revenge shouldn't be the highest priorities. The master explains that the first leader forbade the saved lives from being wasted in the fire of resentment. For this reason, the members use their new lives to provide support and help the people who most need it around the world. They prefer to follow the path of chivalry with honor instead of getting lost in the blind search for blood revenge. Their immense library holds valuable techniques from extinct sects and also manuals donated by new members. She stops walking suddenly and reveals with sadness in her eyes that her former family was also eliminated by the cult. She lowers her face, demonstrating the deep of carrying that terrible memory of the past in her chest. She reveals that her strikes mix the style of her former clan with ideal techniques she found in the library. Jun realizes that this was how the techniques of his old sect ended up in the society's library. He reflects that 200 years have passed since the fall of his sect, and that the society has become a strong pillar of support. The young man apologizes immediately for having made his dear master touch on a subject so delicate and painful for her. She wipes away tears, laughing, and says they better hurry because they are already very close to their final destination. While they walk, she tells curiosities about the mountain, famous for its incredible beauty and natural landscapes. The grand headquarters of the society is very well hidden in the middle of all that dense mist covering the mountain. She warns the young man to follow her steps with great attention to be able to cross the local illusion barrier. Namgung Jun lets out a sigh of extreme surprise to see the landscape transform before his eyes suddenly. He is paralyzed in shock to see that the society is in the exact place where the palace of his past life stood. Upon reaching the imposing gate, the local guards bow respectfully to greet the coming of the hall leader. She explains, laughing, that all members wear bamboo hats when going out, but says he will have to find out the reason only later. While climbing the steps, the boy feels a deep nostalgia for finally being back at the home of his old life. A respectable elder with a white beard named Yoon Kung Jong appears, asking if that is the young man she mentioned. With a big smile on her face, she hugs the boy by the shoulder and confirms with great pride that he is her disciple. The elder analyzes the boy very closely, realizing that the master must have seen something really special in the boy. He announces that he will skip the other bureaucratic tests and asks when they plan to conduct the strength test. Namgung Jun surprises everyone by taking a step forward and declaring aloud that he is ready to take the test now. The elder is very surprised, and the boy confirms that he has learned only the basic yang energy technique so far. The situation starts to get very interesting, and the elder decides to accept the audacious challenge of the brave boy immediately. The old master presents a strong warrior and commands the young man to try to block just a single direct strike from that man. The formidable opponent named Kang Mong comes down the stairs with firm steps, demonstrating all his enormous presence. Namgung Jun looks to the side, half worried, and warns his master that he is without any sword to be able to fight. She draws her beautiful golden sword and hands it to the boy, warning that a common weapon would not withstand the impact. The young man thanks her respectfully, taking the powerful divine weapon and preparing himself mentally for the great test. Kang Mong warns seriously for the boy not to commit any madness and just try to dodge his attack. With a cold and piercing gaze, he warns that the boy could end up dying if he tries to block the direct strike. He jumps with everything, raising his large sword and advancing fiercely against the young man who remains still. In a quick and very precise movement, the young man draws the divine sword, preparing his body to hold the impact. The opponent is impressed to note that the boy's body is extremely firm and withstands the terrible initial pressure. The blades collide, generating a strong wave of wind and sparks that spread throughout the training courtyard. The boy uses the opponent's strength to deflect the trajectory of his weapon and slides quickly to his back. Kang Mong is left totally without reaction upon realizing that his strongest strike was easily redirected by the boy. Taking advantage of the great opening, the boy raises the golden blade, ready to deliver a lethal counterattack from behind. The warrior manages to defend himself in time, but notes with fear that the boy copied his own technique perfectly. With great lightness, Namgung Jun moves away and lands on the stone ground, maintaining absolute control of the situation. The experienced combatant realizes, surprised, that his own hand is shaking quite a bit due to the force of the collision. He notices the boy's thin physique, unable to understand how someone so young can have so much physical power. He concludes that such absurd strength does not come only from muscles, but from an impeccable combat technique. The boy emanates a pure sword energy that impresses all the experienced warriors who are watching. Li Si celebrates happily, applauding her prodigy for having blocked the strike and even managed to counterattack. He remembers that the boy had only learned basic energy and is intrigued by such genius. The grand opponent looks at the floor and realizes, perplexed, that he was pushed back by the boy's strength. He accepts that he was surpassed by a novice and reflects that the society's future is very well guaranteed with him. The respected elder observes the boy from afar, thinking that the young man was born with a truly divine talent. Kang Mong whispers, surprised to notice that the legendary master came down the stairs for the first time in many years. The elder comments that the society's great leader would surely want to train the boy if he saw that fight. He approaches calmly and asks the name of the young man, who introduces himself with pride as Namgung Jun. The old master touches his shoulder and declares him officially as the newest member of the famous Blue Sky Alliance. Li Si celebrates, animated, saying she hopes to see her dear disciple move up the hierarchy quickly. He messes with his robes, explaining calmly that their position changes according to the amount of clouds they possess. The opponent extends his hand to hand over a medallion and thanks him for the valuable lesson he received during the combat. The boy admires the object, thinking he respects very much the humble attitude of his evaluator in accepting defeat. He offers a respectful thank you, holding the golden sword with both hands and demonstrating much gratitude. The young master takes advantage of the moment to ask if the boy already has permission to enter the great library. Without wasting time, she grabs the boy's arm with enthusiasm and pulls him animatedly to go to the sacred place. The boy asks her to go slower, while the elder reflects that the boy will grow like a grand tree. The old master says they need to give all the necessary support to help in the full development of the boy. Kang Mong observes his own hand, still thoughtful, pronouncing in silence the name of the formidable Namgung Jun. He continues intrigued, trying to understand how the young man managed to deliver such a perfect and powerful attack. The elder surprises the warrior by suggesting suddenly that it would be better for him to provide a new sword to use. Kang Mong finally looks at his weapon and is shocked to see that the steel blade is completely cracked. They finally enter the immense library known as the Pavilion of Internal Reflection of the Blue Sky Society. Namgung Jun is astonished by the monumental scale of the place, which seems larger than that of his old palace. He realizes, impressed, that the library of his past life does not even compare with the vastness of that pavilion. She explains, proud, that their society imposes no restrictions for the reading of its secret manuals. The young master shows a rare book, stating that everyone needs to train hard to fight the terrible cult. He understands that the cloud classification serves to limit which books the member can actually read there. The young man reflects that the pavilion's name makes perfect sense, as it serves to evaluate each warrior's level. She asks if he wants help to choose a good style, but the young man refuses the offer politely. He states with much conviction that he prefers to search and choose a manual on his own from the shelves. The young master accepts his decision, but asks to see the book he chooses before starting training. The sun begins to set on the horizon, painting the sky above the grand temple with beautiful orange colors. The young man walks calmly between the shelves, while the library employee watches him. Seated at his desk, the man remembers the master's request to help the boy if he got lost in the middle of so many books. Lisi, who warns the attendant that she needs to leave quickly to resolve an urgent last-minute matter. She reinforces the request for the employee to give some advice to her disciple if he needs help. Suddenly, several martial arts manuals begin to fall piled on the ground, making a very loud noise. The employee observes, intrigued, the boy flipping through the pages of the manuals with frightening and uncommon speed. The man is extremely irritated to notice that the boy is throwing the books up instead of just reading them. Thinking the young man is just a novice, the employee decides to approach to give him a polite scolding. Without paying attention to the man, the boy chooses a simple training sword to put his techniques into practice. The employee is surprised and scared to see the young man position himself with the rustic weapon with total seriousness. In the blink of an eye, the boy begins to deliver several sequential strikes into the air with perfect movements. The man widens his eyes, unable to believe the absurd level of skill he is witnessing right there. He realizes, scared, that the young man read complex techniques and assimilated them perfectly in a very short time. The boy concentrates all his energy, causing an impressive, brilliant aura to arise around his body. An immense gust of wind and power expands throughout the pavilion, leaving the employee completely stunned. In a complete state of shock, the man begins to tremble and rests his hand on the desk to keep from losing his balance. He swallows hard, totally paralyzed, while trying to process the overwhelming speed of that sword strike. The young man finishes his movement with total mastery, appearing like a true bolt of lightning, cutting the hall's darkness. Suddenly, a mysterious voice echoes through the place, asking directly for the identity of the young prodigy. Jun looks back, confused to see a large and imposing silhouette emerge right behind the employee's desk. The employee begins to sweat nervously upon realizing who just entered the society's library by surprise. The intimidating man with red hair demands to know what extraordinary sword technique the boy used. Jun is on high alert upon feeling a terrible and familiar demonic energy presence coming from that man. He grips his weapon very firmly without understanding how a demon managed to infiltrate the heart of the Alliance. The three remain in a tense silence while the power smoke of the new adversary spreads through the room. The young man tries to remain calm to analyze the situation without demonstrating that he discovered the opponent's secret. The employee tries to calm the spirits, explaining, stuttering, that the boy is just a new recruit who just arrived. The red-haired man pushes the employee aside with ease, demanding he get out of his way immediately. He opens a curious smile, saying he has never seen that fantastic sword art in any book in the pavilion. Jun answers calmly that it is a new combat technique he himself is developing now. The imposing man walks slowly toward the boy, noticing he is not lying in his words. He challenges the young man to show his strikes, promising to give a great reward if he is satisfied with the fight. The attendant shouts desperately, trying to warn that the young man is still a beginner and lacks energy for that. The red-haired man tells the employee to shut his mouth and just watch, while the attendant hopes for the master's quick return. Jun accepts the challenge immediately and demands to receive a sacred healing elixir as a reward for his performance. The opponent finds the boy's audacity funny and says he likes direct people who don't go in circles. He promises he will not use his internal energy to leave the combat fair and balanced for the boy's level. With the challenging gaze, the young man answers coldly that the opponent can use all his power if he thinks it is necessary. The red-haired man lets out a laugh, finding the boy's boldness very amusing, and draws his own combat blade. Without hesitating, Jun advances with extreme speed, delivering the first precise strike of his new combat technique. He manages to block the attack, but is surprised to feel the incredible strength and real weight of the boy's strike. With a war cry, the opponent uses his sword to push the young man and try to regain control of the battle. The boy executes a perfect acrobatic maneuver in the air to dodge the counterattack and get away with great safety. He lands with total firmness on the stone floor and already prepares immediately to deliver his next movement. An intense and brilliant energy aura begins to accumulate around Namgung Jun's training blade. He combines the fast movements he just read, creating a perfect and lethal variation of his old technique. The boy leaps, dividing his attack into 3 simultaneous strikes that advance with everything toward the opponent. The red-haired man widens his eyes in complete astonishment upon noticing the complexity level of the attack. He defends himself in a hurry, realizing that the boy used the same basic style as him, but with incredible precision. A smile of satisfaction appears on his face to see that the boy was able to create such a genius variation of the strike. The young man feels he is finally recovering the keen senses and precision he had in his past life. However, the terrible weakness of his current body begins to weigh, making him decide he needs to end this soon. The two exchange several strikes at high speed, while the boy focuses on being faster and more precise each time. He slightly adjusts his stance and takes a well-calculated side step to throw the opponent's balance off. Namgung Jun focuses all his strength and executes the powerful 12th form to deliver a devastating cut. The impact of the strikes generates a strong explosion of brilliant blue energy that reverberates throughout the pavilion. He delivers the 3 quick cuts into the air, trying to break his strong adversary's defensive barrier once and for all. The red-haired man opens a huge smile, saying that fight is becoming extremely amusing. Namgung Jun retreats with elegance and positions himself firmly on the floor, keeping his eyes focused on his opponent. He breathes deeply, maintaining total concentration, while observing every minimal detail and movement of the enemy. The red-haired adversary states proudly that he can predict the trajectory of the next attack with ease. The young man thinks to himself that his training sword must act with the speed and precision of a lightning bolt. He prepares himself mentally to advance in a straight line relentlessly, as if he were a bolt of lightning toward the target. Blue electrical sparks begin to arise around his fingers as he accumulates his little energy on the weapon. With his eyes shining intensely, he finds the perfect path to deliver the battle's decisive strike. The boy executes the 13th form, jumping with everything from top to bottom in an overwhelming aerial attack. The strike generates an immense blue electrical discharge that illuminates the entire pavilion and kicks up a huge cloud of dust. Because of the excessive effort and the force of the shock, the boy ends up cutting his hand, which begins to bleed quite a bit. The red-haired opponent admits mentally that he felt a real threat coming from that impressive attack from the boy. He reveals that he needed to use his internal energy to manage to block the strike and not be truly hit. The two fighters finally move away in the hall and lower their weapons with the end of that electrifying confrontation. Sheathing his sword, the red-haired man decides to accept reality and recognize the great merit of the boy. The young man looks at his wounded fingers while the opponent reflects on the incredible natural talent the young man possesses. He recalls the impeccable sequence of attacks and realizes that the movements formed a complete fighting style. The opponent asks if his technique has 13 forms in total, and the young Namgung Jun confirms in silence. Curious, the warrior wants to know what the official name is of that new and powerful style created by the young prodigy. The boy opens a slight smile and begins to answer, revealing the first words of the name of his technique. He declares proudly that his martial art is called the 13 electrical discharges of the brilliant lightning. The attendant is shocked to notice that the boy created a high-level technique in the middle of a real combat. The red-haired warrior focuses his piercing gaze on the boy, seeming to have made an important decision suddenly. With a slight smile, he states that he liked the young man very much and invites him to join his personal hall. Jun is quite confused and thoughtful, trying to understand what the all mentioned by the adversary would be. Suddenly, Lee Si has imposing voice echoes through the place, breaking the silence of that conversation immediately. She enters the hall very irritated and questions if the members of the other group now go around stealing other people's disciples. The red-haired warrior just smiles mockingly and answers calmly that he liked the boy's potential very much. She stares at him with rage and declares with absolute firmness that the young man is her disciple and tells the rival not to touch him. The tension between the two leaders grows rapidly, as if a furious tiger and a great serpent were about to battle. The man mocks if she wants to resolve the situation by fighting, while the two begin to grip their weapons. Namgung Jun decides to intervene in the discussion and asks calmly for both leaders to stop fighting immediately. He surprises everyone by declaring firmly that he accepts the invitation and will indeed pay a visit to the rival hall. The young master is left totally without reaction, and the boy compliments by saying he will make the visit only when the time comes. He explains that he will only act as the red-haired man's training partner from time to time, leaving the attendant surprised. The red-haired warrior puts his hand to his face, finding the boy's audacity funny, while the young master remains serious. He lets out a genuine and very loud laugh, demonstrating having been extremely impressed by the boy's attitude. The red-haired man says the proposal is interesting and asks for the young man not to take too long to pay that training visit. Before leaving, the man throws a small black wooden box for the boy to hold carefully with his hands. The imposing warrior says a brief goodbye and begins to walk out of the pavilion, leaving the two behind. With a quick movement, he vanishes from sight in the blink of an eye, demonstrating his great agility of movement. The young master crosses her arms, complaining with rage about the arrogant and abusive attitude of her long-time rival. She looks curiously at the little box in the boy's hands, who explains it is the elixir promised as a reward. The box reveals a brilliant pill that she identifies as an excellent medicine for those who are starting training. The young man stores the valuable item, and the two begin to plan their next destination toward the Great Hall of the Divine Sword. She explains that new members go through a period of adaptation and rigid training, competing among themselves in the dormitory. She says best win the right to choose their own hall, and that is why she cannot just take him straight with her. Namgung Jun asks her not to worry, as he guarantees he will win every fight to enter her hall. Night falls over the society's grand headquarters, while the warriors prepare for the challenges of the coming days. Alone in his room, the young man decides to swallow the brilliant healing pill to try to restore a little of his internal flow. Soon after ingesting the strong medicine, the young man feels a terrible stab in his chest and lets out a loud groan of pure pain. He begins to sweat cold, realizing with fear that the elixir ended up provoking a sudden seizure in his energy channels. He quickly positions himself with crossed legs on the bed, trying to concentrate to control the terrible internal pain. He uses his brilliant yang energy to envelop his body and diminish the painful effects of the sudden seizure. He realizes that this painful process is strengthening his technique and that he will soon be able to unlock his first vital point. Completely exhausted and without strength, the young man lets himself fall on his back on the soft mattress to try to rest a little. He concludes that he should not be in a hurry to avoid worse damage and decides to focus on training his physical strength the following day. The next morning, the sun rises, shining intensely between the clouds and illuminating the entire courtyard of the great society. New recruits begin to train their sword strike under the attentive supervision of the local respected elders. The elder with the white beard comments happily that the new group of students strived quite a bit throughout the recruitment. He observes, satisfied, the dedication of all the young talents who train with much firmness and focus throughout the stone courtyard. In the distance, some students begin to whisper, curious, trying to discover who the talented person who just arrived there is. The master reveals that her name is Dan, so high in that she possesses enough talent to challenge a hall leader in the future. Another student comments that she is fantastic, but that she still lags a bit behind the legendary and renowned warrior from Shanxi. They look confused to the side, seeing the boy doing only simple physical exercises instead of training with the sword. The companions wonder, mocking, if the boy really thinks he will be able to win the test by doing only squats. They think the boy should have trained the basics before coming and that he is just wasting precious time. The experienced elder just observes in silence, thinking that the truth will only be revealed when everyone faces each other in the arena. As there are many candidates, he decides to organize the great test in the form of direct duels to better evaluate the novices. 3 days pass quickly, and the decisive moment of the combats finally arrives, agitating the entire main arena. The public in the stands whispers anxiously to see the level of skill and the fights of the class's best competitors. The respected elders take their places in the tribunes of honor, ready to watch and judge the youth's combats. The dual judge asks for silence from everyone in the arena and announces aloud that the first great battle is about to begin. A strong gong is struck firmly, making a strident sound echo throughout the setting to officially start the test. The announcer calls the names of Danso, Hai and Namgung Jun, ordering that the two position themselves in the center of the stone arena. The young warrior warns that she will not go easy because he is young and tells the boy to draw his sword soon to fight. Namgung Jun makes a bored expression and answers with total disdain that he does not need to draw his weapon to face her. The lady is left completely enraged by the boy's mockery and grits her teeth, feeling her pride being wounded there. Taken by rage, she advances with absurd speed, delivering a powerful vertical cut in the direction of the young man. The boy maintains absolute calm and just focuses his attentive gaze, calculating the exact trajectory of the young woman's attack. With a simple and imperceptible movement, the boy blocks the strike and makes her sword fly far from her hands into the air. The young woman widens her eyes in complete shock and dread, unable to understand how she was disarmed in such a humiliating way. The boy remains calm while her weapon falls, stuck in the stone floor, consolidating the young man's quick victory. The judge points to the middle of the arena and declares aloud to everyone that Namgung Jun is the great winner of that combat. The public is totally shocked, wondering how such a promising prodigy was defeated with such ease. In the tribunes, the masters comment, satisfied, that the boy's movements are even more precise and refined than before. The defeated young woman falls to her knees, unable to accept the unbelievable result, while the boy retires in silence. He walks calmly back to his place after proving that just a single movement was enough to win the fight. The test judge does not waste time and already summons the next competitors to go to the center of the arena to start the new duel. The crowd in the stands begins to shout, animated, upon noticing the triumphant entry of the most awaited competitor of the day. The announcer introduces the new fighter, highlighting his great reputation as the rising star of the entire region. He reveals the name of the famous warrior Bakri Chiang, who enters the arena with an extremely imposing and calm countenance. The two fighters assume their combat positions in the circular marking, while the judge authorizes the start of the confrontation. The opponent of the young prodigy is enraged upon noticing that the boy did not even bother to draw his sword. With an imperceptible movement, the enemy sword is repelled with extreme strength and precision, defining the course of the battle. With extreme agility, he jumps over the adversarial attack without even needing to pull his sword to defend himself. The opponent widens his eyes, completely horrified upon realizing the divine speed of that young prodigy. Bakri Chiang exhibits a cold and imposing gaze, focused on ending the combat soon without giving openings to his adversary. With an elegant movement, he just shifts his gaze, disregarding completely the weak strength of his opponent. The adversary falls unconscious in the stone arena with just a single swift strike delivered by the grand young man from Shanxi. The judge points upward, declaring Bakri Chiang as the great winner under the applause and enthusiastic shouts of the audience. Jun notices that the winner gave a quick look in his direction provocatively after the end of the duel. The boy opens a smile on the corner, thinking himself that he has no intention of surrendering the final victory. The tournament continues quickly, and everyone already imagined that the prodigy from Shanxi would reach the grand finals with ease. The clerk uses his brush to register the name of the other great finalist, Namgung Jun, on the combat table. The other recruits begin to whisper, surprised, because they had never heard of that boy so skillful before. The leaders comment among themselves that it is very strange for a warrior with such strength to possess no rumors about him. Li Si needs to cover her mouth with her hand to hold back the laughter upon seeing the reaction of astonishment from all the other masters. She walks proud, thinking it is obvious he is good since she is his master, and is anxious for the day of the final. The great day of the tournament finals finally dawns, gathering all the spectators around the great arena. With a thoughtful gaze, the prodigy Bakri Cheong focuses his thoughts on the mysterious opponent he will have to face. He analyzes the boy's stance, noting that despite having a visibly thin body, he carries a firm presence. He recognizes mentally that the sword strength demonstrated by the boy in previous duels was terrifyingly high. Bakri Cheong recalls the perfect attacks and concludes that the boy's sword energy is truly exceptional. The boy emanates great and cold determination, stating to himself that he cannot lose that great fight in any way. He remembers the sacrifice of his destroyed family and swears he will win to manage to avenge the terrible end of his clan. The huge warrior who will act as judge assumes his central position and asks the two finalists if they are already ready. He introduces himself as leader Dan Jung. Cian warns that he made a point of arbitrating personally because it is the grand final. Namgung Jun maintains a serene countenance and breathes calmly, ignoring all the enormous pressure coming from the stands. The judge warns the two young combatants to give their best and perform a fair combat of which they will not regret. With a quick gesture and a firm shout, the great master authorizes the official start of the awaited final battle of the tournament. The boy observes his adversary draw the blade, remembering rumors that say his specialty is the heavy sword. With extremely firm and very calculated steps, the prodigy from Shanxi begins to advance toward his opponent. He decides to focus on a quick and overwhelming attack to not give any chance of reaction to his young adversary. He delivers an extremely swift frontal strike, cutting the air and trying to corner the boy right in the first second. Namgung Jun just follows the trajectory of the blade with total serenity, keeping a cool head in the face of danger. With absurd reflexes, he dodges with perfection, giving an acrobatic leap and passing over the swift attack. The opponent widens his eyes in complete shock to see that his fastest strike was avoided with such ease. With much lightness and combat balance, the young man lands perfectly behind the rival, preparing his own counterattack. He notes, scared, that the boy shifted his center of gravity and already started the terrible technique of the 13 discharges of lightning. The boy executes the first form of the brilliant lightning, making the adversary realize that his sword is not heavy at all. The blades collide fiercely, generating an enormous wave of brilliant electricity that makes the entire arena floor tremble. The prodigy from Shanxi uses all his strength to block the attack, wondering how a thin boy has so much physical power. The force of the impact pushes the two warriors away, who slide backward, opening a great distance in the training courtyard. The spectators in the stands are left completely paralyzed with astonishment at the absurd level of that collision of power. He notices his damaged weapon and decides to ask a direct question to the boy before continuing the confrontation. He questions if the boy did not originally use a heavy sword as his main combat weapon in the past. Jun answers with tranquility, stating that a true warrior always needs to keep an ace up his sleeve to win. The prodigy from Shanxi looks at his trembling hand and lets out a slight laugh, impressed by the genius of his adversary. To everyone's surprise, he sheathes his sword and decides to admit his defeat formally in that great duel. The young Namgung Jun accepts the attitude with respect and bows in gratitude for the great battle they had. The audience goes wild, applauding on their feet and shouting much with the ending of that spectacular duel of the two prodigies. The leaders comment, amazed that the boy was capable of ending all his battles with just a single swift strike. Lee Si opens a radiant smile, clapping, very proud of the spectacular performance of her dear disciple. The master raises the boy's hand, proclaiming Namgung Jun as the great and undisputed champion of the society's tournament. Namgung Jun makes a light gesture with his head and opens a beautiful smile, celebrating his great victory in the competition. The master of ceremonies approaches him, holding a black case, and hands the prize promised to the great winner. The box reveals a legendary medicinal root with more than 300 years of age that shines with an intense magic light. He thanks calmly, leaving the master amazed by his cold attitude, even in the face of such a valuable reward. Soon after the end of the duel, one of the leaders of another hall tries to convince the young prodigy to join his group. He states proudly that there is no better starting point for those who wish to become the sovereign of the sword in the future. The title of Sword Sovereign is the maximum and most coveted position within the entire structure of the Blue Sky Society. The boy knows very well that to defeat the terrible demonic cult, he needs to reach this grand position of power. But before he can answer, the red-haired opponent surges by surprise, cutting the two's conversation with much mockery. He puts his hand on the rival's shoulder, lying that the boy already accepted to enter his group, leaving the boy unhappy. One more Grand Hall leader approaches, gripping his weapon, and confesses to being very excited about the young man's talent. The muscular man promises to give absolute support and all necessary resources if he chooses to enter his hall. The red-haired man rages and begins to yell at everyone, saying the boy is his, while the rivals tell him to stop screaming. They begin to argue badly about who should train the prodigy, while Namgung Jun just moves away stealthily from there. The young man thanks for all the excellent proposals received, but warns that he already made his final decision about which hall to follow. He points proudly to the beautiful Lee Si. Hyen declares to everyone that he decided to join her Hall of the Divine Sword. The rivals complain to her, accusing her of cheating behind the scenes, but she answers calmly that the boy is her disciple. The red-haired man grumbles with rage, while the other leader notices that the boy's internal energy combines with her technique. Namgung Jun bows solemnly, asking formally to be accepted into the hall commanded by his dear master. With a victorious smile on her face, she accepts officially the boy's request, guaranteeing his entry into the Hall of the Sword. Some time later, the two arrive at the beautiful and quiet main building of the Hall of the Divine Sword high on the mountain. The boy enters the place with quite high expectations, but his countenance changes quickly upon encountering the scene in the courtyard. He is shocked to see that the disciples of her hall are fighting in a chaotic and disorganized way in the middle of the courtyard. One of the most experienced students approaches with a mocking smile, saying he heard much about his skills. He draws his blade, wanting to test if the new recruit really is good or if he is just a weakling who cannot take a combat. The veteran points his weapon in the boy's direction, challenging him arrogantly in front of all the other students. He insists on knowing if the boy really has the talent that everyone has been commenting on, or if it is just rookie talk. Jun opens an ironic slight smile, commenting that the best way for a swordsman to communicate is through combat. Without hesitating, he firmly grips the hilt of his wooden sword, accepting the veteran's arrogant challenge. He assumes his classic fighting stance and tells the opponent to advance with everything without needing to waste time with words. The boy exhibits a quite serene and focused gaze, maintaining absolute calm before the start of the inevitable combat. The two opponents stare fixedly at each other in the middle of the courtyard, preparing to test their real strength in that arena. The veteran advances, delivering an aerial cut from top to bottom with extreme speed, trying to end the duel soon. Namgung Jun moves with extreme lightness, sliding his feet across the stone floor very quickly and very precisely. Using agile steps, he dodges with total ease, creating several ghost images that confuse the opponent. The adversary widens his eyes in complete shock upon realizing that the novice is mastering the technique of infinite steps. The boy dodges in the air with extreme mastery, leaving the experienced veteran completely stunned with his agility. Lisi watches the whole battle from the top of a wooden balcony, following attentively each of the boy's movements. She opens a beautiful, proud smile to see that her disciple did not waver in the face of pressure and acted with much firmness. The students who watch are impressed to notice that the boy's reaction speed does not fall behind in anything. They realize, surprised, that the novice is managing to dictate the combat pace without suffering any kind of pressure. The two exchange quick strikes in a spectacular collision of swords that generates an intense storm of blue energy. The opponent tries to resist, wondering how a thin boy manages to release such powerful attacks with ease. He finally understands the reason why the master made a point of recruiting and training that boy personally. The veteran opens a very animated smile and confesses to being quite curious to see how far the boy can go. He grips his blade with even more strength, preparing to increase the combat speed and test his limits. Suddenly, another veteran's voice echoes through the training courtyard, ordering firmly for them to stop the fight there. In the distance, Lisi continues observing everything in silence, appearing like a very proud master of her young disciple. The opponent sheathes his weapon and says, smiling, that the next opportunity they should train using real heavy swords. He introduces himself formally as Gong Jun. Amon welcomes the new recruit with a friendly and sincere smile. Namgung Jun introduces himself with respect, saying it is a great honor to meet his veteran. Meanwhile, the shouts of celebration echo throughout the grand structure of that training temple. The other members comment, surprised, that he won the tournament with a single movement and grabbed the attention of all the leaders. The group celebrates happily, welcoming the new recruit and recognizing that he is not a common novice. Night finally falls over the temple, leaving the entire mountain under a beautiful starry sky. Alone in his room, Namgung Jun suffers terrible pain upon noticing that his seizures are worsening more and more. He notes, worried, that the cold energy in his body is becoming much stronger and more aggressive than before. The only way out is to use the electrical energy of his special technique to hold on firmly until the pain diminishes. Suddenly, someone opens the bedroom door with quick steps and approaches the boy who is suffering. Two warm hands are placed firmly on his back to help control the energy flow. Upon looking back, he realizes relieved that his dear master arrived just in time to help him recover. She channels a powerful and brilliant yang energy to stabilize her disciple's trembling body. The young man thanks from his heart for the rescue, and she comments that she felt his energy oscillating from very far away. He explains he needs to master his special yang energy technique as quickly as possible to avoid new crises. The master agrees, saying that the cold energy of his broken meridians will continue growing at an accelerated rate. Because of this, he asks for his mentor's help to consume the valuable elixir he received as a prize for the tournament. The lady is quite thoughtful and surprised to hear her young disciple's serious request. With a beautiful smile, she agrees to help, asking him to trust totally in her skills. Namgung Jun bites the powerful 300-year elixir, preparing to absorb all its enormous power. He knows the 300-year medicinal root is not perfect, but still carries an enormous amount of power. Upon swallowing the root, he trusts that that excellent medicine will help quite a bit to strengthen his internal combat energy. He positions himself and warns that he is totally ready to absorb the maximum power he can from the elixir. The young man begins to guide the internal flow to avoid the elixir's great power from spreading in an uncontrolled way. A strong wave of brilliant heat begins to envelop the two warriors, illuminating the entire quiet room. She realizes, impressed, that he guides the elixir's power with the mastery and ease of an experienced grandmaster. A grand pillar of golden light arises, leaving the mentor shocked to see that he absorbed all the elixir's energy. She is perplexed, for she never heard of anyone capable of absorbing every minimal drop of power from an elixir of that level. His eyes shine with electricity, proving he possesses a truly divine talent for martial arts. She praises his progress, and the boy bows, thanking and promising to dedicate himself even more to training. The young master says goodbye in a gentle way and asks for him to enjoy the rest of the night, to rest quite a bit. She walks, thoughtful, through the beautiful and serene bamboo grove under the soft light of the day that begins to clear. While she walks, the lady continues reflecting on the impressive, breathing flow she witnessed in the room. Her steps become faster and decided as a huge amount of ideas begins to arise in her mind. She feels she finally found the perfect path to break the limits of her own yang energy technique. The warrior opens a beautiful smile, very grateful to realize that this great evolution is due to Jun's teachings. The next day, the sun rises radiant, illuminating the entire external training courtyard of the great society. A talented combatant trains his precise sword cuts, demonstrating much agility and focus in the movements. The instructor explains the rules and warns that everyone must master half of the basic technique before going on missions. He guides the students to pay attention to the exact sequence of the movements to practice with the wooden dolls. Namgung Jun positions himself, holding his simple weapon while drawing the curious glances of the other companions. In a fraction of a second, the boy executes a diagonal cut with extreme speed, surprising whoever was looking. The students are left speechless to see that the boy managed to cut the training doll in his very first attempt. Everyone thinks it is impossible to learn so quickly and begins to suspect that the master taught the technique to him before. The instructor is also quite thoughtful upon remembering that he saw the leader leaving the boys' room the previous day. He decides to clear the doubt and asks directly the young man if the leader gave private lessons to him secretly. The young man denies with tranquility and begins to spin his blade to demonstrate that his talent goes much beyond that. He suggests with total confidence that they can already advance straight to the next level of that combat technique. The warriors are stunned, calling the boy a monster for mastering the art with a speed that surpasses the leaders. He recognizes the boy's mastery, concluding that the hall finally won a truly brilliant talent. The companions agree that they feel safe by his side, but say they need to train a lot so they don't get left behind. The instructor smiles, surprised, and accepts teaching him the advanced level of the grand sword technique. He commands the boy to observe with attention to copy the movements, while Jun asks respectfully to be guided. In the society's conference room, the great leaders gather to debate an important political subject. One of the advisors reveals that they received information that a mysterious group is acting in the shadows of Gyeongsi. They discuss a possible military intervention, and the red-haired warrior volunteers to lead the combat if need be. Finally, the committee begins the debate to decide if they will allow the young Namgung Jun to perform missions in the external world. The master reflects that it was great to save him from the demons, but agrees that sending him back to the world can be very dangerous. One of the elders asks, surprised, if that young man really is the boy who possesses the grave cold energy blockages. Another leader states, irritated, that their priority has always been to prevent such a rare boy from falling into the hands of the enemy cult. He warns that the demonic cult would be very happy to discover that he learned a legendary lightning technique. One of the advisors hits his glass with force on the wooden table, calling for the hall leader to hear her direct opinion. The great elder with long white hair asks for her to reveal what she really thinks about that dangerous situation. With a serene gaze, she answers with firmness she does not see Namgung Jun as someone weak who needs constant protection. She recalls the strong lesson of honor she heard from him, saying that those who do not assume responsibility should not wield swords. The warrior recalls with admiration that these were exactly the first words the young man said when they met. She declares that they must guide this great prodigy, who is destined to become the divine sword of that society. The master states with pride that their role is to conduct wonderful talent toward the true light of divine justice. The red-haired warrior hits the table, irritated, questioning if the others can only see the risk of him falling into the hands of the cult. He asks if there has ever existed someone with so much potential and guarantees that none present their comes close to the boy. He mocks his companions, saying they complain about the lack of warriors, but tremble with fear when seeing a real talent. Another advisor admits that the boy possesses a truly frightening ability for creation in martial arts. The leaders agree that with a little more experience, the young man will surely become the greatest pillar of strength of the alliance. The old leader with long white beard smiles and decides that the best path will be to allow the young man to go out on missions. However, he imposes the special condition of excluding any mission that involves the dangerous demonic cult. The other masters nod their heads in approval, finding the great elder's decision very fair and sensible. The red-haired rival also agrees with the proposal, thinking that this mission limit will help protect the boy. Lee Si-ha opens a beautiful smile on the corner, extremely relieved to see that her disciple finally gained permission. The scene changes to show the missions in the Anhui region, while a voice asks if he already knows the details of the task. Jun confirms that he must investigate a dangerous local gang known for causing many problems in that province. He observes his companion from the side, thinking in silence that he could solve that mission alone without any help. He recalls the moment when the master announced with enthusiasm that his first great mission had been defined. She explained that for being the first time, he should go accompanied by Hyo-il, who introduced himself in a friendly way. Namgung Jun bows respectfully and greets his veteran, saying it is an enormous pleasure to fight with him. However, the young man notices a ceramic bottle attached to the veteran's waist and wonders, curious what that might be. With a suspicious look from under his bamboo hat, the boy asks if that drink happens to be alcohol. The veteran laughs in an awkward way, confirming it is a drink, but says he only needs to take a sip when he is going to wield the sword. The young man is even more worried, while the veteran suggests going to the local market to gather some clues. At a port pier, some men in a boat shout mercilessly, ordering to pull a rope immediately. One of the henchmen pulls the thick rope with much force, without demonstrating any kind of consideration for the victim. An iron cage emerges from the water, bringing inside a poor middle-aged man, cuffing desperately. The gang's cruel leader looks down with disdain and asks if the victim is finally ready to reveal the secret. The villain warns with a wicked smile that the prisoner must pay his debt or hand over his own daughter to them. Crying much, the poor father begs for more time, saying no true father would be capable of handing over his daughter. The gang's dangerous boss changes his expression quickly and orders coldly for the henchman to drown the cage again. The prisoner screams desperately for help while the metal structure begins to sink into the dark waters. Suddenly, a firm and imposing voice surges at the end of the wooden bridge, ordering everyone to stop the attack immediately. Surprised by the interruption, the gang leader looks back with much rage, trying to identify the author of that voice. The gang boss lets out a sarcastic laugh upon recognizing the classic attire of the famous Blue Sky Alliance on the boy. Namgung Jun stares at him with a cold and piercing gaze that leaves the mood in the place extremely tense and dangerous. The villain finds it absurd to receive orders from a simple novice warrior and begins to mock the situation openly. The villain shouts furiously while Namgung Jun prepares to release his powerful 13 electrical discharges technique. In the blink of an eye, the boy executes with precision the third form of his attack, channeling brilliant lightning. The attack's impact throws the adversaries directly to the ground with a frightening blue electricity discharge. The young man says with disdain that even with the passing of time, the cowardly tactics of those gangs remain the same. On the wooden pier, the poor hostage continues, trembling with dread upon seeing the henchmen's bodies scattered around him. The veteran Hyo-il approaches in a friendly way, asking if the man is okay, and the victim thanks him much, stuttering. The henchman leader remains fallen on the wood, moaning in pain upon realizing that his gang was totally destroyed. The man runs desperately far from there, yelling thanks to his saviors for having had his life spared. Hyo-il taps his drink bottle lightly, commenting that the reaction of dread from those people makes perfect sense. The experienced veteran observes Jun from behind, praising mentally the boy's unshackable calm during the entire combat. He notices that the young man evaluated calculated with surgical precision the level difference. Even before delivering the first strike, he notices also that the boy's reaction and movement speed are completely outside common standards. The veteran warrior concludes, fascinated, the level of that combat technique does not match that of a simple novice. He concludes that he will have many surprising pieces of information to report to the master as soon as they return from that mission. The day continues very clear in the province with beautiful white clouds covering the horizon above the forest. At the entrance of the gang's headquarters, one of the guards watches the gate sloppily, without noting he is being observed. Suddenly, the watchman makes a confused expression and asks, scared, who is approaching the place without authorization. An intense and brilliant electrical discharge involves Namgung Jun's wooden sword right before the watchman's eyes. In a fraction of a second, the young man executes a swift cut, eliminating the opponent without giving any chance of defense or scream. The watchman's body falls heavy on the earth ground, making a muffled noise that echoes slightly throughout the headquarters entrance. Inside the house, the criminals drink happily, mocking a debtor whose debt tripled in value very quickly. The band leader celebrates, saying that thanks to those captured innocents, they will receive an immense fortune in coins. Suddenly, the wooden door is shattered with extreme violence, scaring all the criminals who were there. Namgung Jun enters in an imposing way, accusing the gang of sucking the life of innocent people just to enrich themselves. The henchmen stand up in a hurry, yelling with rage and demanding to know who the cheeky invader is who dared to enter there. One of them recognizes the clothes and the bamboo hat and yells, scared, upon noticing it is a member of the famous alliance. Upon noticing that he is completely alone, the henchmen charge toward Namgung Jun in a coordinated way. The young man just spins his hilt with mastery, causing small blue electricity sparks to arise around his hand. He executes a quick vertical movement, cutting the defensive barrier of the first attacker with total ease. A brilliant beam of electricity expands with violence, destroying the wooden floor and throwing the rivals far. In an incredible sequence of movements, Namgung Jun hits several henchmen at the same time with his swift strikes. Another furious criminal tries to hit him from behind, delivering a quick attack with his bright iron combat blade. Without needing to look, the young man dodges the trajectory of the strike and hits the adversary's chest very precisely. Several opponents fall defeated and moaning in pain on the stone floor, while the young man observes the situation with coldness. With a slight and disdainful smile on the corner, the young man whispers that the strikes of his opponents are extremely weak. 3 more adversaries attack simultaneously, but he blocks all 3 blades at once using just one hand. That the criminals fall defeated on the floor as the young hero advances relentlessly without suffering a single scratch. Taken by hate, 3 experienced warriors run toward him, shouting that they will finish that insolent boy. They jump at the same time with their weapons in hand, trying to close all the boys' dodge exits in the hall. One of the henchmen widens his eyes in complete despair upon noticing the supernatural speed of the boy's counterattack. Namgung Jun executes an acrobatic leap and spins his body, slicing the defense of his 3 opponents in mid-air. With perfect balance, he lands with extreme lightness upon the crossed blades of his defeated adversaries. He finishes the spinning movement, releasing a gust of cutting wind that knocks down the rest of the criminals there. One of the opponents falls to his knees, screaming in despair and extreme agony upon realizing his hand was cut in the combat. Looking around terrified, the criminals who remained on the floor call the young Namgung Jun a relentless monster. One of the surviving leaders warns, scared, for everyone else to retreat immediately and not approach him. The elderly supreme leader of the gang finally takes a step forward with his sword, revealing that he himself will take care of the boy. Meanwhile, at the back of the headquarters, the prison guards are knocked out by Yahello, who paves the way with extreme agility. The experienced hero delivers a precise and quick double cut, knocking down the last watchman who tried to defend the cells. The henchman collapses unconscious, and the people who were imprisoned in the iron cells look surprised at their savior. Meanwhile, the innocents imprisoned in the iron cell continue trembling quite a bit, not knowing what will happen to them. Jun remembers when he praised the veteran's tracking skill, which minimized the technique, laughing in a humble way. He suggested attracting the attention of the bandits at the entrance, while Yahello infiltrated to rescue the hostages in secret. With a firm gaze, the young Namgung Jun declared that the safety of all innocent civilians was the absolute priority. Yahello reflects that he was a little worried at the beginning by the boy having joined the alliance just by direct recommendation. But now he is certain that the young hero possesses both exceptional skills and an unshakable virtue. The charismatic veteran comforts the people imprisoned, saying that the Blue Sky Alliance arrived to guarantee their safety. He opens the large cell with ease and suggests with a smile that everyone get out of there to breathe a little fresh air. Back to the main confrontation. The criminals watch in panic upon seeing that their supreme leader is in trouble. They are incredulous to witness the powerful gang boss being pushed backward by the swift strikes of the young man. Sweating with nervousness, the elderly leader wonders indignantly how such a young boy manages to emanate such strong energy. The gang chief feels he is facing a true demon who trained the art of the sword for several decades. Desperate, the villain threatens to kill each one of the captured hostages in case the boy does not give up the fight immediately. Upon hearing the cowardly blackmail attempt, Namgung Jun just opens a mocking smile that scares the rival even more. He reveals that he acted alone on purpose and guarantees that by this time, all the hostages have already been freed by Yahello. The elderly leader widens his eyes upon realizing he fell into a perfect rescue strategy without a chance to react. Taking advantage of the opponent's distraction and panic, Namgung Jun jumps with agility, executing a definitive aerial strike. In a fraction of a second, the wooden blade cuts the old man's shoulder precisely, making blood gush into the air. The young man resurfaces immediately behind the old man, maintaining a cold and relentless stance after the execution of the strike. The leader shouts with hate and tries to turn to attack, but the boy reacts with an even more frightening speed. The young man says coldly that now it is too late for him to manage to draw his weapon and react to his next attack. With a quick movement, the boy holds the opponent's hand, preventing him from managing to unsheath his combat blade. A strong and brilliant aura of blue energy begins to envelop the young warrior's body, illuminating the entire hall. And an enormous power shock expands, throwing the gang's elderly leader with extreme violence. Suddenly, a mysterious elder with long hair enters the hall, impressed by the boy's overwhelming strength. Namgung Jun stares at him with suspicion, noticing immediately that new adversary carries a hostile energy. The dangerous elder demands to know the true identity of the invader, while accumulating a dark power around him. He walks slowly, observing the details of the boy's clothing, and notes the basic level insignia on his sleeve. The old man complains, furious, saying the boy ruined completely the businesses that guaranteed his peaceful retirement. He looks with total disdain at the gang chief on the ground, mocking him for having been easily defeated like a dog. The boy is intrigued upon realizing that common gang counted on the strong support of someone powerful behind the scenes. The young man positions himself firmly and calls the attention of the dangerous opponent, who remains stopped in the middle of the hall. He states with seriousness that he would like to hear many more details about the type of business the old man managed. With a challenging gaze, the young man warns that the elder will need to delay his retirement until they talk for real. Irritated with the boy's audacity, the old man releases a violent dark smoke and advances fiercely to deliver the attack. The two warriors move at high speed, colliding their steps with extreme strength and agility on the earth floor. Jun accumulates a brilliant energy in his hand, remembering with satisfaction the secret technique he studied in the library. The two combatants collide their palms violently, generating a terrible energy rumble throughout the stone hall. The smoke curtain spreads while the young man uses his quick reflexes to dodge the force of the counterattack. The experienced elder retreats, surprised to notice that his own hand is shaking quite a bit due to the boy's electricity. With a frightening smile, the old man realizes, fascinated, that the boy managed to master the extremely rare and powerful yang energy. Consumed by greed, the old man declares with much madness that he will steal all that wonderful energy for himself. himself. He advances with his claws extended, trying to capture the boy's neck, who reacts quickly to avoid the grip. The impact of the strike destroys the stone floor, kicking up dust and rock pieces throughout the structure of that courtyard. During the collision, the young hero's bamboo hat is damaged, revealing his shining eyes in the middle of the combat. With total firmness, the old man manages to hold the boy's robes, preventing him from managing to jump far away from there. The villain begins to use his forbidden technique to drain the boy's vital force, who feels his body weaken suddenly. Namgung Jun grits his teeth, feeling the energy being sucked, but reveals with a shrewd gaze that he already expected that strike. Boy remains completely calm while a dangerous dark smoke begins to envelop both their bodies. The old man laughs insanely while invoking the terrible, forbidden technique of absorption to try to finish the duel. Jun asks with disdain if the elder's energy is so pathetic because he learned cheap techniques from evil factions. The old man grits his teeth, completely enraged, screaming about how that brat dares to insult his grand strength. Consumed by greed, he advances with absurd speed, delivering several strikes to steal Jun's pure energy. He thinks in silence that if he manages to steal that wonderful yang energy, he will be able to reach the peak of his spiritual power. The villain delivers a violent punch on the ground, cracking the stone while cursing the boy as an insignificant rat in the middle of the dust. Namgung Jun dodges, giving a spectacular leap and landing softly on top of the dark roof tiles of the headquarters. He questions if the elder allied the local gang to the demonic cult just to obtain that forbidden and pathetic technique. The old man jumps in his direction, confirming the accusation and yelling that he no longer has any reason to hide his plans. With a maniacal gaze, he screams that he will devour every last drop of the young man's wonderful combat internal energy. The boy says calmly he already heard everything he needed to know and blocks the attack, holding the rival's fist in the air. In the next moment, he squeezes the villain's hand with so much force that he breaks his bones, making the old man scream in extreme agony. Taking advantage of the opening, he applies a devastating kick to the opponent's chest, throwing him violently against the tiles. The old man plummets from the roof with much force and falls, breaking the wooden structure of the headquarters' main training courtyard. Fallen on the destroyed floor, the elder spits a large amount of blood, feeling that his body was totally broken. Jun lands softly in the center of the courtyard, kicking up a dust and stone curtain around his imposing silhouette. Totally without strength, the elder begins to crawl in dread, begging desperately for the boy to spare his life. The young man just raises his brilliant weapon and executes a vertical cut, and blue electricity sparks. A thick trail of blood drips from the tip of his wooden sword, decreeing the end of that dangerous and terrible rival. Upon searching the villain's body, the young man finds a small and old mysterious book that grabs quite a bit of his attention. The veteran Yahello returns running to the courtyard and is completely astonished to see all the destruction at the combat site. The veteran comments, surprised that the confrontation already ended, and jokes, saying the boy certainly made a huge mess there. Yahello identifies the defeated elder as a faction trash who was allying himself with the terrible demonic cult. Jun agrees in silence, realizing that the enemy cult's influence in the Enhu region was much larger than they imagined. Yahello observes the boy, thoughtful, wondering what type of novice manages to perform such a grand feat right at the debut. The young man extends his arm, handing over the booklet he found with the elder so that his mission partner can examine it. The veteran flips through the yellowed pages with quite a bit of curiosity and suspects that the object is a logbook. Suddenly, a trembling child's voice echoes through the hall, pulling lightly the tip of Yahello's robe to grab attention. The little boy cries, saying he cannot find his sister, and the veteran tries to calm him down in a very gentle and affectionate way. The little one reveals that before they arrived, several henchmen chose some children from the cells and took them far away. The little boy tightens the fabric of the clothing with much force, imploring with tears in his eyes for the heroes to save his sister. He cries quite a bit, begging on his knees for the two powerful warriors to bring the missing children back. The veteran analyzes the book and confirms, horrified, that it is a list of children sold to the terrible enemy cult. But Yahello holds Jun's arm and warns that his mission ended there because he will need to ask for reinforcements from the society. Namgung Jun makes an expression of extreme surprise and asks what his companion really wants to say with that order. The veteran reveals he received express orders to prohibit the boy's participation in any matter linked to the cult. With a serious countenance, he turns his back and asks pleas for his young companion to return to headquarters now. Jun tightens the hilt of his weapon with immense hate upon hearing the hated name of the enemy cult he wishes to destroy so much. He rages, thinking in silence that the society is trying to contain him and protect him until the very last moment possible. The veteran begins to walk, insisting that their territory is too dangerous for a simple recruit to get involved. The boy hesitates for an instant, lowering his head while trying to find the right words to answer the veteran. He takes a firm step forward and questions in a firm way if his companion really still sees him as a common recruit. The veteran turns with a quite severe gaze and warns that that is not advice, but an order that must be fulfilled. Jun takes some firm steps, remembering that retreating before danger just because of rules or situations is a cowardice. He shouts, asking how he can turn his back on danger after already having drawn his sword to defend the innocents there. The young man grips the hilt of his blade with determination, proving he has no intention of abandoning the children. His firm and imposing warrior gaze transmits so much conviction that it leaves his mission partner without any reaction. The veteran lets out a sigh and accepts to go together, but warns he will need to request urgent reinforcements for the alliance. Yahello smiles confidently, revealing his nickname, Tracker Sword, which guarantees he never loses his target's trail. Without wasting time, the two powerful warriors shoot at high speed, entering the dense mountain forest. They run side by side like two agile shadows determined to reach the kidnappers and rescue the innocents. The two heroes continue advancing along the trail at high speed, leaping over the fallen logs on the path. The experienced veteran points to the side, indicating the correct direction that the carriages followed in the forest. He grabs the boy's attention to analyze the recent footprint marks that remained stamped on the moist earth. Yahello recognizes the classic steps of the enemy cult and guarantees that they are very close to reaching the gang. Jun notices a small broken branch and admires mentally the spectacular level of tracking of his veteran. He is impressed to notice that the veteran manages to find subtle marks even running at extreme speed. Out of breath, the young man begins to suspect that his companion inherited secret teachings from a fantastic master. He notices the distance that formed between the two and understands the reason for the experienced warrior to try to send him back. He reflects that even practicing the basics and feeding very well since he joined the respected society, his current physical vigor is still much below the ideal, causing him to barely manage to keep up with Yahello's steps. The veteran hides behind a bush and warns in a whisper that they finally managed to reach the enemies. From afar, they spot the two carriages and conclude that the band plans to embark on some boat right ahead in the river. Namgung Jun suggests that they hurry immediately to prevent the criminals from escaping with the kidnapped children. The veteran agrees seriously, alerting that if they get on the boat, it will be impossible to rescue the hostages in time. Jun notices, moved, that his companion was running slower on purpose just to not leave him behind. He then proposes that the veteran advance ahead to gain time, while he catches up as quickly as possible. Yahello accepts the suggestion with a smile and asks only for the young man to save enough energy for the final battle. Next, the veteran warrior jumps from the tree branch with extreme speed, leaving toward the rescue place. Alone, the young man swears to himself that soon after the end of that mission, he will focus on improving his weakened physical vigor. The veteran observes from the top of a tree the carriages and the henchmen who complain about the boredom of the walk through the forest. He analyzes the whole situation from above, calculating about 10 watchmen protecting the transport of the children in the carts. The experienced hero begins to prepare his secret needles, thinking he needs just to gain time until the boy arrives. Without making a sound, he throws the first needle, hitting squarely the neck of distracted watchman, who moans in pain. The henchmen enter in complete panic, shouting about the presence of an enemy who is using hidden weapons in the shadows. Yahello jumps, revealing his presence, and throws a new sequence of sharp needles in the direction of his opponents. One of the criminals is hit in the face, while the other manages to defend himself in time using his combat blade. The band leader notices the attacks from afar and wonders, intrigued, why the invader doesn't approach to fight directly. Suddenly, he opens a wicked smile upon starting to suspect the real intention behind that retreat strategy. He orders aloud for everyone to ignore the solitary invader and focus only on continuing to move the carts until the river. Yahello realizes, scared, that the criminals were quick to understand his plan to gain time and continue from afar. Without another alternative to stop the carriages, the veteran decides it is time to draw his sword for real combat. With a quick and brutal movement, the warrior cuts the carriage rope, knocking the horses down to the earth ground. The draft horse collapses heavily on its side, causing the entire transport to be interrupted in the middle of the road. Screams of despair begin to echo from inside the wooden structure of the carriage damaged by the strong impact. Upon looking through the opening, Yahello spots several children tied up and crying much, who implore desperately for help. The experienced hero is paralyzed in shock upon confirming with his own eyes that the hostages really are children. Suddenly, a strong enemy jumps from the top of a horse, advancing fiercely against the hero who was distracted. With quick reflexes, the veteran manages to dodge the fall of the new opponent's attack by taking a step backward. The two swords collide violently, generating a strong rumble that reverberates throughout the beautiful forest woods. The force of the impact pushes Yahello back, causing him to slide several meters back on the earth and dry leaf ground. The hero wipes the sweat with his arm, trembling upon noticing that if the strike hit him squarely, he would have died immediately. The new and frightening adversary lands softly on the dirt road, keeping his eyes fixed on the tired veteran. The villain mocks openly the warrior of the Blue Sky Alliance, saying with disdain that he is trembling with dread before his strength. Without caring about the insults, the veteran just grabs his ceramic bottle and begins to drink very generous sips. The opponent opens an insane smile, finding it a complete absurdity that the hero decides to drink in the middle of such a dangerous situation. Yahello lowers the bottle and declares calmly that there only exists one single person in the world that he fears, and that is not that rival. In the next moment, he executes a high-speed horizontal cut that catches the adversary completely by surprise. The henchman widens his eyes, astonished to notice that the hero's reaction speed and agility changed suddenly. He realizes, scared, that Yahello transformed into a much more focused and lethal opponent after taking that long sip. The two finally collide their weapons, generating a brilliant energy rumble that illuminates the entire mountain woods. The deafening sound of the violent combat between the two swordsmen echoes strongly throughout the dense pine forest. They exchange very quick sequential strikes, while the enemy tries to break Yahello's guard and defense in the air. The opponent gives an extremely violent stomp on the ground, accumulating immense physical strength for his next attack. He executes an impressive sequence of swift kicks, pushing the tired veteran backward with much strength. With a certain punch, the cult official manages to break the hero's balance, throwing his body against the lawn. The veteran recovers from the strike, realizing with fear that he is facing an elite officer of the enemy cult. He remembers that upon joining the cult, the members gain a powerful technique of dark yin or yang essence. The elite warriors who master this technique and reach the peak level are named as brilliant cult officers. The two continue moving like swift shadows through the forest, jumping between the treetops at high speed. The villain mocks, saying the hero is excellent at dodging and running from side to side like a scared rat. Yahello knows that to face an opponent of that level, it would be ideal to count on the strength of a 3-cloud-level warrior. He decides that he needs to defeat him right there to avoid the villain crossing the young Namgung Jun's path further ahead. The opponent loses his balance for a brief instant after missing a strike, leaving a great opening in his combat guard. Upon noticing the golden opportunity, the hero readies his metal sword, decided to deliver a decisive counterattack there. He executes a swift strike, but the cult official manages to block the blade, using just his powerful dark energy. Yahello grits his teeth in complete despair upon realizing that his best technique was easily contained by the villain. The cult official lets out a sarcastic laugh, warning in a wicked way that the attempt to counterattack failed. In a fraction of a second, the villain lands a direct and devastating punch that breaks the bamboo hat and injures the hero's face. The veteran is hit squarely by a relentless sequence of strikes without managing to find space to defend himself. He lets out a moan of pain upon being thrown against the earth ground, feeling the terrible impact of the attack on his body. Fallen and very bruised, he realizes that he was completely surpassed by the enormous amount of internal energy of the opponent. Even broken and without strength, the proud warrior tries to get up from the earth to continue defending the innocents. From inside the carriage, the children watch everything, crying much, and implored desperately for the hero not to die there. Wiping the blood from his face, the veteran opens a confident smile and asks in a mocking way if the rival only has that strength. The villain rages, yelling that the alliance members always mess up his plans, and swears he will make him suffer before dying. Yahello grips the hilt of his blade with all the strength that remains, preparing his body for one last combat effort. The cult official jumps from the top with his sword in hand, delivering a vertical strike to end the duel once and for all. However, the villain widens his eyes in surprise upon noticing a sudden change in the combat atmosphere around him. A firm foot lands on the dirt road, discharging an intense and brilliant wave of blue lightning throughout the forest ground. Namgung Jun resurfaces in an imposing way, walking calmly over the body of one of the henchmen who tried to stop him. The dangerous cult official begins to sweat nervously upon feeling the terrible and overwhelming pressure that emanates from the boy. The young hero approaches the place, calling for his veteran in a calm way as if nothing were happening there. With a serene gaze from under his bamboo hat, he asks politely to his companion if he can finally enter the battle. Instead of worrying about the boy's coming, the veteran confesses mentally that he felt an immense relief upon seeing the boy. He opens a proud smile and says that he counts on the boy's help, recognizing that he really is not a common novice. The villain points his sword in the direction of the newcomer, asking with disdain if the brat came to act as reinforcement. He analyzes the young features of the boy, noticing, surprised, that he seems not to have reached even 20 years of age. But old man is scared to notice the sharpness and the absurd intensity of the bluish aura that involves the boy's entire body. The villain narrows his eyes, quite confused, and wonders if he is in some way mistaken about the real power of the boy. He lets out a laugh, mocking that the coming of a simple cloud-level recruit will not change at all their tragic destiny. Ignoring the provocations, Jun shoots at high speed, leaving only a brilliant dust trail on the dirt road. The villain delivers a powerful vertical kick, shouting with fury that the opponent continues to be just an insolent boy. Jun dodges the attack with extreme ease, recognizing mentally that his current cultivation level is still lower. He knows that the initial stages serve only to practice the basic forms and the circulation of his little internal energy, but remembers that reaching the peak of cultivation allows manifesting spiritual power externally through the blade. This grand mystical phenomenon increases drastically the destructive power and the impact strength of each strike delivered. The villain shouts with rage, delivering a new strike, while Jun blocks the impact, using his wooden sword with firmness. With spectacular agility, the boy jumps into the air, deviating from the attack, and asks what the rival plans to do in that situation. A strong electrical discharge begins to accumulate around the young warrior's foot in mid-air. The cult official widens his eyes in complete shock upon realizing the immense spiritual power that arises above him. Namgung Jun descends from the air with extreme speed, delivering a relentless attack in the direction of the scared cult official. He reflects with calm that the sword energy strength and the palms in the end are just common parts of his martial art. The two warriors exchange extremely violent strikes in a spectacular collision that agitates the entire dirt road. The young hero maintains absolute control of the situation and manages to corner his opponent without suffering any type of danger. The villain shouts with hate, calling the boy a persistent pest while trying desperately to defend himself from the quick attacks. Jun retreats with total balance and positions himself firmly on the floor, preparing to deliver the movement that decides the fight. The furious cult official jumps in his direction, delivering a punch with all his strength and yelling for the boy to die. The boy maintains calm and thinks to himself that with a firm sword in his hands, he is capable of performing any feat. In the blink of an eye, he delivers a single and devastating vertical cut, made by an intense lightning discharge. The villain remains stopped from behind in the middle of the smoke, while silence takes over the beautiful wooded forest road. The old man begins to spit blood and wonders in complete despair how a mere one-cloud-level warrior defeated him. The opponent's body finally falls without strength to the earth, consolidating the spectacular victory of Namgung Jun in that duel. Jun walks beside the veteran through the forest and expresses his gratitude for their combined efforts at the end of the mission. The young man responds with humility and asks, with visible concern, about the injuries his companion sustained during the combat. The veteran Hyoil continues walking, even with his leg bandaged and supported by an improvised wooden crutch. Jun feels guilty for Hyoil's injuries and vows to train much harder to overcome his own shortcomings. Heel tries to reassure the boy in a cheerful manner, saying that this injury is nothing to worry about. The young man acknowledges that he learned a great deal from his companion while rescuing the kidnapped children and recovering the book. He points to the golden notebook and asks if they can now consider their first mission a success. Hyoil repeats the question with a faint smile on his face as he reflects on the details of what actually happened. The veteran thinks that the young man's great accomplishments cannot be summarized in such a simple way. Hyoil remembers that the boy single-handedly defeated an entire gang and even managed to capture a high-ranking official of the evil cult. He admires the young man's strong sense of justice, which showed immense kindness in welcoming and protecting the innocent. Hyoil also recalls the sword technique, which proved to be fantastic enough to overcome any disparity. The veteran thinks the young man's talent is far too extraordinary for him to remain confined by the limits of that sect. Determined to highlight his partner's achievements, Hyoil decides that he must write an impeccable mission report. Suddenly, the veteran stops in his tracks, indicating that something important has caught his attention along the path. Hyoil states that he is going to the pavilion to deliver the report and instructs the young man to return to the main headquarters alone. Namgung Jun's journey continues as the gates of the Grand Temple appear, standing imposingly before his arrival. The young man hears someone calling his name and suddenly senses an extremely powerful presence approaching. He turns around, startled, and feels an overwhelming pressure coming from the imposing man walking toward him. The man tells Jun to relax and introduces himself formally as Kang-gok, the respected leader of the combat hall. Upon hearing the name, the young man immediately recognizes the importance of the hall that leads the temple's vanguard. Jun performs a respectful bow in greeting to the powerful leader standing right in front of him. That combat hall is famous for possessing a monstrous destructive power capable of devastating enemy lines. Its warriors are highly trained to lead the front line and overwhelm their rivals in major battles. The strength of the combatants in that group is capable of hurling dozens of opponents away with total ease. As the great commander of this ruthless hall, Kang-gok is feared by anyone who crosses his path. They say he is a formidable master who wields a legendary dual axe and possesses monstrous physical strength. Kang-gok takes a firm step forward, releasing a wave of heat, and mentions the result of Jun's first mission. He reveals that he is already aware of the direct confrontation the young man had against members of the terrible evil cult. Feeling the crushing pressure of that fiery aura, Jun confirms the information firmly, despite his nervousness. The commander asks if the young man understands the reason why the cult hunts men born with special energy channels. Jun realizes he is being intentionally tested by the leader and replies that he is well aware of their reasons. He explains that the fanatics of that dark cult are known for using profane rituals and macabre arts in their schemes. The boy recalls that in his past life they performed bizarre rituals and understands why he has now become their primary target. The reason for such persecution is that his body is perfect for controlling opposing energies simultaneously. Kong-gok suggests in a harsh tone that the young man should stay quiet within the faction for his own safety and that of the world. Jun reflects in silence that everything would be much simpler and easier if he just decided to give up on his life. He remembers that his master gave him a second chance, and that the path of martial arts requires honor until the end. The leader shouts with disdain, asking if the boy thinks having a little talent is enough to govern the world. He thinks of his former disciples and ensures that his determination with the sword will remain straight and unwavering. The leader watches the young man closely, wondering if that reaction is merely the silly passion of a talented child. Kong-gok warns that the enemies will hunt him to the grave and challenges him to prove if he has the real strength to endure it. The man grabs the handle of his combat axe with extreme force, determined to test the young man's skills right there. He leaps through the air wielding his heavy weapon and orders the young man to draw his sword to begin the clash. Jun's sword collides directly with the giant axe, generating bright sparks and a huge shockwave. Kang-gok widens his eyes, extremely surprised to see the unexpected resistance the young man demonstrates in the block. The young man maintains a totally focused and cold gaze, showing no fear in the face of his opponent's crushing blow. The leader notes that Jun was not intimidated by his aura and managed to perfectly predict the attack pattern to defend himself. Determined to test the young man's limits, the commander prepares a new strike and advances, shouting with extreme excitement. Jun dodges with mastery, leaving the leader perplexed to see a recruit read his battle movements with such precision. Kong-gok decides to increase the force of his attack even further, seeing that the young man managed to resist the first strike. Jun analyzes his opponent's heavy assault and realizes that his metal sword will break if he just tries to block. The young man decides he needs to use a secret sword technique he learned in his past life to deal with this. With incredibly rapid movements, he changes his combat stance and prepares to deflect the axe's impact. He plans to redirect all of the enemy's overwhelming force using the mystical principle of energy rotation. The spectacular collision of the two techniques generates a thunderous blast that makes the stone floor tremble with great violence. The shockwave resulting from the violent spiritual impact is so powerful that it even makes the temple roof tiles rattle. The entire structure around the training courtyard begins to shake due to the immense energy released in the confrontation. Jun feels the extreme pressure and ends up being pushed several meters backward while trying to keep his feet firmly on the ground. The boy is quite impressed by the absurd amount of internal energy the enemy leader possesses. With one final effort, the young warrior directs all his power upward to completely deflect the assault. The devastating attack of the axe is successfully deflected and hits the stone floor, opening a deep crack there. The opponent's heavy blade gets stuck in the destroyed floor, kicking up dust and small pieces of rock all around. A huge fissure extends between the two warriors in the center of the courtyard, marking the end of that frightening clash. Gasping from the great physical exertion, Jun leans on his sword and tries to catch his breath after surviving the attack. Kong-gok watches the scene, completely paralyzed by shock, finding it impossible that a recruit could have defended that blow. The leader looks at his own foot and realizes, startled, that he himself was pushed back slightly by the collision. He recalls the path he chose to tread with determination and the promise to always maintain a firm and honest heart. Jun mentally reinforces his great commitment to save people in danger and to fight for what is right in the world. The young man thinks that he tried to put all his sense of duty and honor into that one decisive sword block. Kong-gok comments that most people start with this ideal of justice, but end up giving up in the face of difficulties. Jun remembers his faction companions with fondness and thinks he has no reason to fear as long as he is with them. Upon noticing the unwavering firmness in the young man's gaze, the experienced commander breaks into a smile of pure satisfaction. He praises the boy for having already found his own martial path, despite being so young and talented. Kang Gok states that he will respect the young man's decision and also the Sword Pavilion Master's decision regarding his future. The leader extends his hand, sending a gentle wave of warm energy toward the boy to help him calm down. Jun feels a rapid transmission of internal energy purifying his body and relieving the physical exhaustion of the combat. He realizes that such a technique could only come from a fantastic master who has reached the maximum peak of spiritual cultivation. The man says it would be foolish to spread rumors about the path of such a promising swordsman and searches for something in his robes. He tosses a small wooden box toward the boy, telling him directly to take the gift inside. Jun manages to catch the object in midair with ease, but wears a look of confusion, not knowing what is inside. The commander reveals it is a special elixir, perfect for healing internal injuries caused by blocking the blow. But Jun thinks to himself with a faint smile that, in reality, he did not suffer any kind of internal injury in the fight. The boy begins to suspect that the commander just wanted a good excuse to give him that valuable medicine. With great politeness, the young man bows in gratitude while watching the man walk away calmly. In another room, the elder reads the mission report and wonders pensively if he should also give Jun an elixir. Hyo-il comments that it would be a huge waste to hide the boy's talent, and the elder fully agrees with the opinion. The experienced elder strokes his long white beard with an enigmatic and thoughtful look on the subject. He breaks into a warm and proud smile, noting that the young hero truly did not disappoint him at any moment. News of Jun's incredible feats on the mission spreads rapidly throughout the temple's sword pavilion. The disciples whisper, startled, speculating that the boy must have reached a first-class level of cultivation. A young warrior with dark brown hair listens to the conversation in silence, admitting that Jun's talent defies his age. He finds it hard to believe that Jun has been training for less than a month and recognizes that the boy's success was inevitable. He turns around and orders firmly that the disciples stop gossiping and immediately return to practicing their strikes. The sun begins to set on the horizon, coloring the skies and the beautiful structures of the sword pavilion with orange hues. In his room, Jun meditates in silence while an intense and bright golden energy envelops his calm body. He clutches his chest firmly, realizing that constant meditation has helped reduce the frequency of his internal pains. Despite the improvements, the young man knows that the anomaly in his energy channels still causes massive wear on his body. He realizes his current physical development is limited and concludes he needs a different training method. At that moment, a knock on the door interrupts his thoughts, and the young man calmly authorizes the visitor's entry. A beautiful young woman enters the chamber carrying some books and asks if the boy has finished his meditation. The young man thanks his master for overseeing his training, and she jokes that she is very proud of his progress. Curious about the items in her hands, Jun points to the stack of books and asks what they are about. She explains that she brought a set of physical training manuals and medical books straight from the faction's collection. Jun realizes with satisfaction that if Master perfectly understood his physical condition and the problems he faces, she smiles with pride, saying she read all of that while he was away in order to teach him in the best way possible. Feeling deep respect and gratitude, the young man thanks his master cordially for all that special dedication. She then touches the hilt of her blade and suggests that their main focus must remain on sword training. The young man agrees immediately, and she excitedly invites him to head straight to the temple's large training area. The two position themselves in the center of the beautiful training courtyard, marked with the sacred symbol of spiritual balance. With sword ready, the master orders him seriously to show his special technique of the 13 lightning strikes. The young man channels his energy, generating blue lightning around his blade as he initiates the form he himself created. Jun knows that dueling directly against his master will help him lock the deepest secrets of his technique. The sharp blades slide against each other, generating bright sparks and a metallic sound that echoes through the courtyard. With extreme elegance, the warrior defends against all the rapid strikes without showing any difficulty at all. Jun notices the impeccable precision of his master, whose movements draw graceful and perfect curves in the air. Although they appear slow, her movements are agile enough to block each one of Jun's fast lightning strikes. The warrior's smooth and calculated technique seems to dominate the entire space around the combat in a sovereign manner. They exchange swift strikes in a beautiful sword dance, leaping and colliding their weapons across the stone courtyard. Jun admires his master, realizing that her movements perfectly personify the essence of his martial art. An incredible spiral of blue energy surges in the air, while the rapid attacks create impenetrable defensive barriers. The warrior spins with lightness, redirecting the force of Jun's strikes with truly impressive ease. She leaps backward gracefully, always keeping herself one step ahead of any of the boy's rapid assaults. Jun stabilizes himself on the ground, feeling the blue lightning of his own combat technique vibrating throughout his arm. He wonders if his mystical yang lightning technique will combine perfectly with his master's martial art. The young man remembers that the fundamental secret of that sword technique consists of controlling the energy flow of the fight. Meanwhile, the soft sword technique perfectly connects the beginning and end of each strike without leaving any openings. With only a light and subtle movement of her wrist, she manages to deflect the young man's attack trajectory with total mastery. Her perfect block completely nullifies Jun's entire line of attack, leaving the two standing face to face there. Seeing her smile so close, the young man recognizes with admiration the real power that the leader of his sword pavilion possesses. Jun draws his weapon away and performs a respectful formal bow, thanking his dear master for the valuable teachings. Still curious about the impeccable defensive movement, the boy asks what the official name of that fantastic technique is. The master looks toward the golden horizon and reveals that the technique is called the distant cloud wall stance. She explains that the secret manual containing these valuable teachings is kept in the temple's main collection. Furthermore, she mentions that only warriors who reached the cloud mark have permission to study it. Jun thinks to himself that all the effort is worth it and vows in silence that he must reach this new mark of power. He clenches his fist with extreme determination, overflowing with the will to fully master that fantastic technique. With a sparkle in his eyes, the young hero asks his master if he can already try to execute the new stance right there.